Greetings! So in today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at these two palettes that I got from TEMU. One I got from a sponsored haul, one I got on my own dime, and why I got a second one is because I really like the design of this palette. So I'm going to show you what I did with these and my impressions on the palettes, and hopefully that will be helpful to you as you maneuver your own purchases online. The first one I got is this pink one, so I labeled it Sennelier because guess what? That's the paints that are in there. So when you open it up, it's kind of a big palette, so I'll see if I can zoom out just a bit. I think this is a bit better, but I might put it, sideways just so you can see better. So anyway, when you open the palette, you get the lid, which is one big mixing area. I made a swatch card for these paints, and then you open this up, you get these two flaps that open on each side. So usually palettes will have a flap that opens down like this, but these have two flaps that opens to the side, like wings, and I really like that. These are quite stable, meaning you can put a decent amount of pressure on them and they stay like straight. There's an extra little cup that comes with the set. I haven't found a use for it, but I think it would be a good one to put if you like to use white paint, like white opaque paint, like titanium white watercolor or gold paint or something like that. You could put it in there and have it be inside the set or outside the set. Anyway, this set has space for 36 colors. You could add more colors in this area in the middle here if you wanted, but in terms of its original layout with sections, it has 36 little areas for paint. Now, what I did with this set, I'm kind of happy I noticed this, but I was a bit unsure what tube paint to put in there because basically when you get a palette and it's all empty squares like that, I automatically go to, I gotta put tube paint in there, but I noticed that my Sennelier pans fit in there quite perfectly. And I really like this solution because it's a really easy way to store pan paints in a palette that won't rust if you are new to this whole thing. My previous video has a bit more on palettes and rust, but yeah, basically this is an all plastic palette and it fits 36 pans in a relatively small area and it has a lot of mixing area options. So I was really psyched about this. I dug up my stash of Sennelier half pans, put most of them in there. I think I have a couple that didn't quite fit, but I chose the colors that I thought would go together better. This is the swatch card I made for this set because it's always good to have a reference. Now, I didn't name or label the colors on there. They're labeled on the pans themselves, regardless of which pan you take. I think I did it. I must have done it for all of them, like the number of the color, the name, the pigment, and then the same info, but again from Sennelier. So that's what I set up in this set. I tried to kind of make a color order that sort of makes sense. So yellows into yellow greens, yellows into reds, into purples, into blues, and I kept the earth tones in these 6 little spots that are a bit outside of the periphery. I left the swatch card in the top lid as I painted to have it as reference, so I only used the wings to mix, and it's a beautiful mixing surface. As you can see, it took the paint really well and it was instantly easy to use. Like I had no issue with it whatsoever. I'm going to show you what I painted. I mean, it's Sennelier paints, so the paints themselves are not good or bad or anything. I quite like them, but they're not the whole point of this kind of review video. It's just the palette, but I used this palette to paint these 2 illustrations. And the palette was a lot of fun to use. I had no beef with it whatsoever. I love the plastic. It's nice, smooth plastic. I love how the pans fit in there. They're quite secure in place, but at the same time, they're not hard to pull out if you want to look at one of them. I'm not entirely sure what to do with this little thing, but I like it. I'm going to find a use for it eventually. And yeah, and when you're done, you just, ideally, you either wipe the wings or you let them dry before flipping them over the paints. But yeah, once you're done and this is dry or clean, you just fold it back and you can keep a swatch card in the lid, no problem, and you close it and that's it. So I'm going to show you what I did with the second one. It's nothing really extravagant or anything, but it has a bit of a different setup than the one with the Sennelier paints. So in this one, the story behind why I have 2 is that quite some time ago, a very kind viewer sent me their spare Arteza set, just the pans. They didn't have a use for these specific pans, so they sent them to me. They sent the box, sent everything, and the pans were new and unused. So I put them in my hoard of things to try out, and then time passed, and now I realize that these are not available as such anymore, so that's why I don't really have a separate review just on these. But when I saw that these had, well, 36, in my case 34 colors, and I saw that this palette houses 36 colors, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I had seen that it could fit pans like my other palette, like it could fit the Senili pans in there. So I was like, maybe I can do the same with these Arteza paints, because 36 pans is kind of a weird, awkward number of pans, and it can be difficult to find a palette that fits them properly. So I unwrapped all the pans, kept the wrappers on these. This is the box, and this is the palette. So for this one, I made a swatch card that had color names on it because it was kind of easier to reference the colors. The pans, they are transparent plastic with no label on them, so I made little sticker label that I put on the pans. Now this particular set, as you can maybe see, I think these pans are just a bit bigger than the Senili pans, and as such, some of them tend to really like bulge out of their spot. I don't know if you can see, I hope you can see, but this magenta one, you can see that it's a bit wobbly and it's set higher up in its little nook than the other ones around it. And same for this scarlet red one. So yeah, some of these you really have to push them in there so they fit. So I don't know why these Arteza pan are, just a bit bigger than the Senili, or perhaps just a slightly different ratio, so they don't fit as well in this palette as the Senili ones do. In terms of the palette itself, it worked perfectly. Now, as you can see, there are two colors that I don't have the pans, so I swatched everything accordingly. I still labeled them so I would know what colors from the set were not there. I kept the swatch card in the lid again, and I used the wings to paint. And as you can see, they took the paint, this Arteza paint, really well as well. No issue, no complaints. It worked really perfectly as a palette. I'm really happy with these palettes. I think they're really great. And like I said, the main elements that I really like of these palettes is the fact that they're all plastic, so no rusting. You can fit half pans in them and remove the half pans, so you can really customize. If there's a color you don't use and you want to substitute it with a different color, you can do that. It's not paint that you poured in there that is kind of stuck in there until you finish it. So this allows you a lot more customization. And then the plastic is a joy to use. The paint doesn't bead on it. It's really smooth. It is a really nice texture of plastic. Like, it's really fun. Okay, it attracts cat hair, but what doesn't? So it's really smooth and nice plastic. And these were really affordable, considering if you look at a metal tin for 36 colors, you're going to pay a whole lot more than you do for one of these plastic palettes. Now, I did paint things with, the Arteza paint, because that's kind of part of the process of testing out a palette. But I did these swatches up top. I did the swatches, and then I did kind of a little item cat spread. And I mean, the paints worked fine. They're decent. They're a bit in between, like, student range and professional range. I wouldn't put them in professional range quite yet, because as far as I was able to find, there's no pigment info about these. And that's often the key element that separates professional paints from student paints. It's either performance or something kind of really important like pigment info. I also checked these with a UV light to see if they use any kind of optical brightener or neon dye in there. And the magenta was a bit reactive. So again, not knowing the pigment info for these is a bit of a hindrance in this case, because you don't really know what you get, and you can't prepare how you will use these paints accordingly. Like, is it just going to be sketchbook paints because it's not very light fast? Can I paint professional jobs with them that will go on a wall or something? It's an unknown. So that's my quick tour of these palettes, my quick thoughts after using this model of palettes for a couple of paintings, and hopefully this will be insightful to you. Let me know what you think of these palettes. Have you gotten them? Have you tried them? Are you interested in trying them now? Let me know in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching. See you all in the next one. Bye bye!